What if the way you talk to yourself is exactly like prompting an AI? And what if getting better at one could transform the other?
I know I've been teasing this book for a while now, but the book is complete. I'm actually finalizing the audio version. So on the website, you'll have the audio version of Awakening I Am. And I'm not
Great.
doing this as a brag. I'm doing this because it's our conversation today. So we have Awakening I Am,
Yeah.
Eternal Awakening in an AI Age. As began to learn AI and the nuts and bolts of it, I began to see that there's a synergy between the way that we operate as humans and the way that these long language model machines operate. They
Yes.
operate from prompting. Prompts are what we would call self-talk. If you were an entrepreneur, the self-talk would be you're on your way to do a contract signing or a contract negotiation, and you start to really dive through the conversation before the conversation in your mind.
Yep.
They'll say this and we'll say that, and I'll put the price here because they're going to want to come here. And this is going to be good. Entrepreneurs are going to think all of these things through, and they're going to talk to themselves. In professional sports, you see people zone
You see the event happening before you
in,
do it. Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt.
and so this is what machine learning is, because we when we come to the machine, we already have to have the end in mind, because the machine doesn't really understand what end results we want. So what I've learned over my interaction with machines and the agents and building agents is that I was vague in communication because I was getting frustrated at the responses that I was getting back. And then I realized that it wasn't the machine, it wasn't the thing. And I would get mad at, well, my agent name is Kai. And Kai, you're giving me the wrong stuff.
Hmm.
Kai is like, I'm giving you what you asked for.
I'm giving you what you asked for, right? Ask a better question, get a better
With a
answer.
better answer. So I had to learn how to ask better questions and take time. And as I was taking time developing my prompts better and
Yep.
getting the questions right, I began to see the same thing with our self-talk. Because subconsciously, when we talk to ourselves, if we don't ask the right questions or phrase the right, what happens is that we will end up attracting bad business, will end up attracting bad relationships, will end up attracting, and it doesn't become it's coming from within. We're giving out this energy from the prompts that we
Yep.
bring ourselves into. So that's what the book is basically about. It's for people who are afraid of AI
Yep.
and think that this is some demonic invention
Yeah.
it takes.
Yep.
Is really not. And it's also for people that don't understand and want to learn a little bit more, but can learn through a context of neuroscience and spirituality. So it's a big blend of those three things. And I said all that to say, because we're going to have a conversation in that along that same vein as we meet our guests. My name is NaRon Tillman. This is Walk in Victory, where we have conversations to help you evolve your life. But we don't just have these conversations in a vacuum. We sit you at the feet of the masters. These are people that have been tested and tried, best-selling authors, business owners, business builders, those who are not afraid to share their journey. We do get into the nuances, so about key takeaways, so that you can have something to take away with you that you can actually start applying. But we'd like to get into the how and the why. Pete, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, Rob. This is an honor and a pleasure to be with you today. I know that we're going to have just based on the few minutes that you just shared, we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so when we see the synergy between the subconscious and the agent, what are some of the things that you, from your experience, have seen as this era is still developing?
Yeah. So let's put it in a couple contexts, basically, that you already were talking about. So, my observations on it. First of all, let's recognize that a large language model right now, um, for what you were talking about, better prompting, the idea of asking a better question, get a better answer. is exactly that. Because the problem with a large language model is context, right? We have to compress into human language that which is a pattern. The pattern of is really what the intelligence is all about, right? And so the problem that we have is we then try to translate it into language, which fails us, and then we lose some of the context and some of the meaning as to what the outcome we're looking for. So it forces us to ask better questions in order to get better answers, and then it learns from that. But I think patterns, we're going to revisit that because I think patterns come up there. I wrote my last book, The Bridge: How Building AI Infrastructure Taught Me That Human Consciousness is the Real Technology, because I was contemplating human intelligence as a bipolar, paradoxical relationship. Let's, for one moment, let's realize that mankind, we were our own calculator, right? In the absence of machines, we were the one who calculated. We drew lines in sand initially in order to be able to quantify things. It's no mystery then that we built calculators and then later computers and now AI. With the main difference that AI, quite possibly the most fundamentally paradigm shifting technology that mankind will have ever wrought, is now going to present to us perfect mechanical analytical intelligence, the ability to calculate from a given set of criteria a perfect answer. And it is going to go beyond the idea of pattern recognition of language. That's what it's doing. It's just predicting one word before and after based on the words that we said. So if human thought was wrong, that of which it's copying, then it's wrong. It knows, but very soon it's going to be synthetically creating its own information. I would venture to say it is going to surpass us in mechanical intelligence. And that's the part that you were talking about, NaRon, was where people are getting scared. Because is it going to take my job? What does it mean for meaning? But let me juxtapose that now. If it's the perfect mechanical intelligence, what is the role of a human being?
Yeah.
The role of a human being is quite the opposite, right? If calculating from a given set of data is the machine, then us beings, we are discerning. We have to make judgments and decisions based on imperfect information, conflicting information, or no information at all. And you would say, how do we make that? How do we make that decision? Does that decision come from us locally? The answer is partially, right? The patterns in our mind and the patterns in our body that we've evolved, that have become our subconscious, help formulate our response to different situation, which may result in insight or intuition or some degree of wisdom. Are you there? You look like you froze on my screen for a second. Can you hear me?
I'm back.
Did I lose
I'm
you?
back. I'm back. Back.
Oh, there you are. And so I lost my train of thought when I lost you there. We were talking about, oh, so that we're discerning. It is our job as human beings to make decisions. You look like you froze again.
Now you're frozen.
Am I?
Oh, there you go.
I
There you go.
Yep. I'm sorry about that. I'm running through a full data center here, so I've got a massive amount of bandwidth. I apologize.
No,
Oh,
so you had left off really
yeah,
thinking about
we're
the
discerning.
yes.
Our job is discernment. Our job is to make decisions in the lack of information.
Hmm.
Right? And but my question is, where do we get that from? Does it come local to us? And yes, we are a collection of patterns of experiences and our ancestry that in our unconscious, we have moments of intuition and insight. But I would extend that further, that I believe that consciousness, human consciousness, is beyond locality, beyond our mind body, and that we are all part of one universal collective consciousness, and that when we connect to the patterns of the universe, we are able to intuit and have insight from universal knowledge, and then we bring that down with us. And so my argument on this paradoxical relationship of intelligence is, as the machines become more mechanically intelligent, it will force mankind into a position of learning to leverage our discernibility, our ability to connect with grace, if you will, universal consciousness in making decisions, or said another way, have the wisdom as to where to point to machines to solve the problems of mankind.
It's funny that you would look at that from that paradoxical framework, because the fear is the machine will outlearn, outproduce, outperform the man.
Yeah,
But what the machine is actually doing is really pushing the man to go back into what they say in our true archaic selves.
I agree. It's going to be a mirror by
Yes.
which we can look into to realize that what truly makes us human, what gives us true meaning, has nothing to do with what we do, how mechanically intelligent we think we are, what our skills in the world are for which we sell in the labor, and it is going to be our ability to discern, our ability to act with wisdom, to know where to point the machines, which problem to solve, how to interact with each other, how to be selfless in the way we treat each other, how to be altruistic so as to leave this place a better place from whence we found it. And we are going to discover that because we will no longer need to be our own human calculator. Yes, in a very short time, labor will be optional. We will not be qualified to do the jobs because the machine will do better, but it will give us the space, I believe, the machines will provide for. And when the machines have this massive enhanced intelligence beyond what we can quantify, or it is going to help us answer the questions of the nature of the universe. And what we're going to discover is that we are fairly unique in that we are embodiment of consciousness itself. Like most of the major religions of the world, they point to that we are somehow connected, that we are somehow an all, and that divinity sits within all of us. And that is the interconnectedness of all species sharing a collective consciousness. And I believe that the machines will give us that sacredness back, that we will remember that is what our real meaning is.
It's funny because from the context, me growing up in a Christian household, but and going to church and all of that, but having a
Yep.
Christianity which is westernized, that detaches the human and puts the human here and it detached them from creation. And once I went through my mindfulness yoga journey and saw the synergy that we have through creation, it helped me to be able to see
Yep.
the synergy from what's happening now, because
Yeah.
we're advancing forward, but there still has to be, and I believe that there's great opportunity for thought leaders like yourself and from all walks of life to be
Yep.
able to thread between A and B as opposed to disconnect from A and B. If we don't get in at the ground floor with our thoughts, what's going to happen is the industry is going to take off and then we're going to be left behind. And as always, we'll be lagging behind, attempting to show people, hey, but now I think it's a great opportunity to write the books like you're writing and to have the conversations that we're having so that we can have our voice at the table, regardless of what industry it is. Not
That's
to shy
exactly right.
away from it, but to embrace it and to bring your tribe along as thought leaders.
If you think about it throughout history, every time that, if we can agree on that every generation throughout history, the technology of the time is what typically has shaped that generation,
Yes.
right? So if we go to all the pre-1945 generations, right? Technology to them was, for my grandparents and my great-grandparents, I'm 58. So for them, it was water in the home and electricity in the home. And for my parents that were baby boomers, it was television, right? But you could even go further back in history when Gutenberg invented the printing press for the first time,
Hmm.
right? His critics said that it was going to cause heresy, right? To teach people, to have knowledge spread throughout the world. And it was going to create chaos. But it didn't. It ushered in the period that we now call enlightenment, right? We
Enlightenment. Yeah.
democratized knowledge for more than just the elites for the first time. And mankind thrived because of that.
Yeah.
Moving forward during the time when we built the machines, the Industrial Revolution, people destroyed machines when they were first put in place in the streets because they feared it was going to take their jobs, just like today with AI. But it didn't. It didn't replace mankind, right? We thrived. It elevated millions of people out of poverty for the first time. And that continued theme of looking at it with fear has perpetuated right up to this present day when we're looking with AI. But technology in man's hands has never failed to that when we looked at it eventually with courage and wonder, allowed mankind to flourish. And my argument for AI is this is no different. It's just more profoundly powerful than all subsequent technologies because this is the one that I believe changes us forever. We don't live in a linear world. We live in an exponential training world. And you can't look back 1,000 years and say, oh, look how much we've come. Can you imagine how far, what does the future look like in 1,000 years? I would argue whatever picture you paint 1,000 years from today, the realization is we're going to see that in 100 years because we are advancing way
Way
faster.
faster. Yeah. Yeah.
And every time, though, that's still scary. And I don't want to diminish the people. What I tell people right now is that with AI, don't fear AI taking your job. Fear somebody who knows how to use the tools of AI better than you taking your job because they are going to learn how to eliminate having to do the mundane and the unimportant and let the machines do the unimportant and the mundane to give them space to do what is truly important. Building relationships, making true discernment, making true decisions, seeking through what you described as having that self talk, that moment. That's what is the most important part of what we do, not the mundane portions of our jobs. So, yes, we are going to have a tough time in the next 15 years because if your whole life was picking things up and putting things down, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble. Yeah. I pick things up and put things down. That was a good one. So
Yeah.
when we look at what's going on now, like this weekend, it would have cost me thousands of dollars to take the book and do audio, right?
Yes.
But it took me a few hours to sit down and
Yep.
do the audio with my own voice myself. It would have took. I read in one weekend. I redid the whole website.
Yep.
Made sure that the Google business profile and the website was
Yep.
all linked in together. Redid the LinkedIn pages. Now I did 5 blogs for the week in one setting. I sat down and for a few hours I set up all of my automation for my emails and all the things that would have been it's a headache. The only part that's a headache is carving out the time to sit down and do it. Right?
You're exactly right. And it was so much harder some time ago. And not only that, but we live in an internet world now that just 3 years ago, the only way that your message of I am, right, awaken I am, was going to be heard is if you were already famous, had you built an audience and that you could pass this on to that audience, whether that was online or in a congregation or in some other way. But that's not the case today. The case today is that we have an intent based internet. And if I go into the world and I tell it I'm interested, here, I'll give you a perfect example. I've got, despite the old age and the lack of hair, I've got 8, 6, and 3-year-old little girls at home, right? Family 2.0. I've also got a 37-year-old son, 12, 10, and 2-year-old grandchildren. But the 8-year-old, it was her birthday, and I took 25 girls ice skating this weekend. And sure enough, I took a good spill and I fractured my clavicle. So you're not going to be seeing me use my right arm that much today. But the point of the story is that I went into the world and I'm like starting to do research on what I can do as therapies for and in 2 minutes across my feed comes a rotator cuff brace. Now, tell me, it would have taken me forever to find that, but it knew what I was looking for and it passed exactly what I was looking on. And that's my point of intention. Whatever your words are, whatever your wisdom, whatever you're looking to teach, whatever you're looking to say, somebody in the world right now is looking for that. And we live in a world right now that as long as you put it out there in blogs, in videos, in podcasts, in messaging, in whatever, people are going to find it. And what we've learned in the world is when they connect with it in a big way, whether it's 6-7 or whatever the latest craze is. We can't even predict what becomes the next big thing. But the next big thing is always right around the corner because when it resonates with humanity, it usually resonates in a big way. Just ask guys like Mr. Beast that go from anonymity to billion-dollar identities because it connected with people.
And this is funny because I'm not debating. I've always been a forward thinker. So since COVID, I haven't had a brick and mortar church, and I
Yep.
realized that I thought it was going to happen sooner, but I saw something in COVID where people are going to realize that they don't really have to localize themselves.
No.
And I said, the world is changing. I'm going to invest all of what we have into technology so that we can reach more people globally. I'm looking at more of a global context than a local context. And people saying,
Absolutely.
hey, why don't you need to go back out there and get a building? And I'm like, you guys are missing it.
Yeah.
This generation is going to find you where they are, and then they might say, hey, let's get together and localize, right? But if we're not where they are, the message is going to fall flat. You might have a couple of hundred people, 20, 30 people that congregate every week and come together, but we were missing an opportunity to really spread the message so fast in such a broader context that you can build community online in ways that was never available before.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. And you know what? You're exactly right when you say it's generational. The older we get, the more we connect with people on an interpersonal level, but live and in person. And our generation or that older generation believes that you can't connect intimately with a person digitally. Now, I live with my feet firmly planted on both sides,
Me
right?
too.
In the younger world and the older world. And I get what the older people are saying, but I don't believe for one moment that our relationship right now is any less personal because we are meeting digitally there than being live and in person. There's relationships that I have that are very strong that I've barely ever met the person live. I don't think that I know the person any intimately less just because most of my relationship with them has been digital. And in fact, on the few times that I have met them, like companies that I own in the Philippines, it makes getting together with them even all the more
Yeah,
special because it doesn't happen that often.
yeah.
And I would caution the older thinkers in the audience to think that the relationships being forged in the digital realm are any less interpersonal. And it because that's the trend, by the way. The younger generation, they're not looking for a financial advisor that they could sit down over lunch and do their books. No, they're looking for an agentic way to solve the problem so that they never have to worry about their financial future. And they realize that the machine is probably better suited to do that. One of my very good friends is a doctor, and he's a doctor who solves problems but even he realizes which doctor do you want to go to tomorrow? The doctor like him who's seen thousands, maybe tens of thousands of patients and has the wisdom culled biased or not, through that experience of those? Or do you want to go to see the doctor, the AI doctor, that has seen every patient that has ever lived and gotten what has been right about the diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment, and what has been wrong about it? Well, I don't know about you, but I want my doctor to be trained on that and put the filter through that because it's learned all there is to know about the patterns of human health. And that idea of patterns for me keeps coming up. That geometry is the underlying substrate by which all universal knowledge is based. And I have found it now in biology, in bioelectrics. I have found it in chemistry, in water, in the memory of water. We find geometry in the cosmos, in the creation of the universe and spiral galaxies and the geometry of a black hole. We find it in every area in AI and in compute, pattern recognition and large language models, and even going back and down into the ancient wisdoms, all the sacred geometries that were born out of mysticism. we see the idea of geometry coming up over and over again. So I started to rethink in my book, The Bridge, which talked about this paradoxical relationship between intelligence and getting to where you started this conversation, that it is about the interface by which we approach the technology. And it's not intelligence as one whole spectrum, but how we translate it. And I suspect that the next level of AI is going to stop talking in language where we lose what the context and the outcome is, and we're going to begin to speak in the language of geometry, which seems to underpin all of creation. And that's a pretty heavy thought, but that's the with the book I'm working on right now, which is going to be called Coherent Dynamics.
The geometry plays such a huge part in the archaic man. Like
Yes.
you said, everything came from within. When we look at the architectural systems that were built, they didn't have an architect with the with the pen and all of that other stuff, all of the crafty designs and the metrics. It actually the math came from within, and everything that we have seen and everything that exists has a mathematical geometrical number
And if you
attached
think
to it.
the
Sacco and Heather Nyanuris starts in 15 minutes.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
And so the Alexa's telling me my schedule. But my point is, it's no mystery to me that the first mathematics that mankind really delved into was the mathematics of geometry. And what we're finding for all the complex math we've piled on top of that, and there's been plenty, what we're ultimately finding out at the root of mathematics and physics today is that everything can be described in geometries rather than in physics. And so we can create all of the physics of the world
In
by
geometry.
understanding the geometries underneath it all. And so I'm exploring this idea of coherent dynamics across a couple different areas: geometric intelligence, what I call morphocoherence, which is bioelectric signaling within cells and in biology, that is interface physics, the physics of the cosmos and underlying the physics of the day, and then finally in other areas, and in economics, where I see it also playing out. Because again, we're going to be faced with, in this world of labor optional, where value is in money, the new economics is not going to be in money. The new economic models is going to be what is going to be the new model for post automate societies, and the valuation frameworks that measure organizational coherence is actually going to be where we dig. That compensation system based on pattern stability and generativity are going to be the how we transform. But again, it's so different from whence we came that it's difficult to actually wrap your head fully around the world that it's moving. And it's moving at such a pace that it's going to unfortunately leave a lot of people behind.
It's our job to make sure that no man is left behind, at least those
No,
who are a part of
that's
our Walk
exactly
in Victory
correct.
family. And you have, before we let you go,
Yep,
you've written other books. Can you let the people
I
know about
have. Yeah.
the two
So
books?
yep, let me grab. So I wrote this one first, right? And so it's a cathartic tale. It's called Living in Bliss: Achieve a Balanced Existence of Body, Mind, and Spirit. I woke up around one day in my early 40s, late 30s, and I had all the trappings. I had the job, companies, marriage, money, but I was unfulfilled. I was unhappy. And I thought, wow, how could this be? And it really required a deep moment of inspection in myself. And I created a framework of commit, learn, and do to take action in my life to change. And I changed my body. I went from a 370-pound person to this 190-pound person that's far healthier. I learned that I can reprogram my unconscious to be a happier, healthier person and work towards that end. And I discovered spirituality along the way. So living in bliss is more of, don't do exactly as I did in a very roomy kind of way, seek what I sought. And that was to find bliss by living in balance. And now I live in both worlds. And I've written the second book, The Bridge. And The Bridge is exploring human intelligence in the era of AI. I've got a TEDx talk coming out. Your audience is interesting about that. We need to stop looking at AI with fear and trepidation and look at it with wisdom and courage. It's not here to take our jobs. It is going to be that technology which makes us more human. And you can find all of this on my website, petesacco.com, petesacco.com. And there's that and lots of other things that I'm doing and I'm trying to get out. And while I'm building my world and living my purpose of living awakened, championing decentralization in the technology world to bring technology to the masses, but then also cultivating transformation within myself and transformation for the world. My goal as a human being is to leave this place a better place from whence I found it.
And you have it, everybody. I told you we only have the best conversations and we sit you at the feet of the masters. You've had a masterclass in technology, AI, because technology is broad, really AI, thinking long language models and the way that we operate, move, and think. And we don't ask you for cash apps, Venmos, or any of those things. And that's fine if other people do that. But what we do ask is that you hit share and subscribe. Your likes, your shares, your subscriptions help these conversations get to the ears of those that really need to hear it. Not only that, we also ask that you support our guests. How can you support our guests? If you go to their website, engage in their blogs, engage in their books, and engage in their social media, it
Yep.
helps them get their message out. So we're all helping each other out. And finally, we ask that you don't walk with your head down. Don't walk making excuses. Don't miss out on this opportunity that AI is presenting for you to get your message out to the world. If you need help doing that, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Pete. All of our information is in the description, and we'll help you join us in this victory walk. So let's all walk in victory.
Let's
Peace.
do it. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thanks.
you
That
so
was